Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. You know, it must be nice to be World of Tanks at the moment, because with all the shit that's going on in World of Warships, World of Tanks, they're so used to being the bad guy. They can probably get away with anything right now, and nobody's going to notice. Although, steady on World of Tanks, I don't want you to... that shouldn't be considered as a challenge, okay? Don't go getting any funny ideas. Anyway, today on the Mountain Pass map, we have a Tier 7 battle, starring Biscuit, here in what, believe it or not, is actually an American Tier 7 heavy tank. It is, of course, the captured King Tiger. I actually like what they've done with this tank. Oh, in case you're wondering how you can get it, it's available to anybody who has a Twitch Prime subscription and has that linked to their Wargaming account. You keep the tank you keep the tank forever, but it's only playable for as long as you have an active Twitch Prime subscription. And as I was saying, I like what they've done with this tank, because it's a down-tiered King Tiger at Tier 7, except it's got the gun that the King Tiger should have. Kind of like the VK3001D, which is a down-tiered Panther at Tier 6, except with the gun the Panther should have. And the Japanese heavy tank number 6, which is a down-tiered Tiger at Tier 6, except with the gun that the Tiger should have. Of course, none of this means that this captured King Tiger is actually a very good tank, although it does have one big advantage: it's got the same armour layout as the Tier 8 Tiger, so it's pretty tough against Tier 7 and lower opponents. But it doesn't have a lot of health. It's got the same weaknesses in its armour as the King Tiger, that vulnerable lower glacis and the relatively weak side armour, and the damage per minute is even worse than on the Tier 8 King Tiger. All of which makes what you're about to see even more hilarious. So, there are two questions that I want you to keep at the forefront of your mind throughout the course of this battle, bearing in mind the horrible mobility of this tank, much like its real-life counterpart, the terrible rate of fire and low damage per minute of this tank, and the armour weaknesses of this tank. How many enemy tanks and how much gold ammunition fired by those enemy tanks do you think it's going to take to kill a single captured King Tiger? It's worth pointing out that Biscuit isn't completely on his own fighting this corner. There is a KV-2 behind him. He is going to get some occasional support fire from a Cromwell, and at one point I think a T-43 as well. But the KV-2 isn't going to last forever, so for the majority of this fight he is effectively on his own. And even with the support that he does get from the Cromwell, there are plenty of tanks around that corner that a Cromwell is really going to struggle to penetrate from the front. I think it's safe to say that these guys are mostly afraid of the KV-2 behind him, which is understandable. I'm not even precisely sure exactly how many enemy tanks are stacked up in a holding pattern around the far side of this mountain. Definitely 4, possibly 5, maybe as many as 6 or 7. That's potentially half of the enemy team, stopped dead in their tracks by Biscuit and a KV-2. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is a classic Lemming Train. It's been a while since I've seen one as good as this. The definition of a Lemming Train in World of Tanks is when a sizable minority or a clear majority of your team all head in the same direction, run into one enemy tank, then all shit their pants, hide behind the nearest rock and all kind of stare at each other, waiting to see who's going to grow a pair of balls and go first, and it's usually somebody who isn't top tier. In this case it's the KV-2. Not surprising, it's a KV-2. The KV-2 doesn't give a shit. The KV-2 has never really given a shit because it's the KV-2, but you'll note some classic Lemming Train activity going on here. When one tank does break out of cover because it suddenly finds where its balls are, the rest of the Lemming Train just sit there watching it go. They never follow its example. But even if it was the friendly KV-2 that they were all afraid of, which again would have been understandable, that enemy KV-2 has just killed him. So now all they have to be afraid of is a Cromwell with a 75mm gun, a T-43 with at best an 85mm gun, and Triscuit Biscuit with an 88mm gun that only fires 7 rounds per minute. And of course, the longer they all hide around that corner, having their health chipped away bit by bit every time they stick their noses out, the worse the condition they're all going to be in when the rest of Triscuit Biscuit's team finish ruffle stomping their way all around the map, crushing whatever opposition the enemy team were able to muster anywhere else but here, because most of the team was here, getting stopped by 3 tanks. You'd think that would be fairly obvious to our lemmings from just looking at the map, but, well, if you're involved in Lemming Train in the first place, your map reading skills were never particularly good to begin with. The KV-2 just got what he deserved for daring to try to lead a Lemming Train by example, and you'll note how the IS, the top tier heavy, the one tank on that corner that could potentially have managed to push this corner on his own, is still hiding around the corner. He's still spamming gold, and he's letting a tank destroyer with 76mm of armour go and fight the enemy heavy tank for him. The T-25 is of course doomed. This is what you get if you're in a Lemming Train and you actually grow a pair of balls. It happened to him, it happened to the KV-2. The IS, last one left alive. There's still an ISU-152 around the corner as well, but are they even paying any attention to their minimap? I mean, do they even realise that there's a P-43 and a Mark 7 Churchill behind them? I'm going to say the odds are not good. Wow. Just wow. You know, I was watching a World of Warships video earlier today. Well, by the time you see this video, earlier yesterday, by one of the North American community contributors, No Zoop for You, in which he tried to categorise the various different types of people who play World of Warships, and pretty much most of what he was saying applied to World of Tanks as well. He split the game playing population down into 3 categories, and he called these categories reactionaries, strategists, and intellectuals. And he described the reactionaries as being the kind of player who can actually be quite good, but who doesn't really plan what they're doing. They just play the game and they react to the situation around them. Nothing particularly wrong with playing like that. A lot of people can get to be very good at the game by just reacting to what's going on around them. But I think it's pretty obvious that Zoop hasn't played much World of Tanks. Because there's definitely a 4th class of player in World of Tanks, ones who don't even react to what the hell is going on around them. So, in addition to the reactionaries, the strategists and the intellectuals, I think we need another category, and I'm going to call them the herpaderps. The Leo, the Jagdpanther and the IS, all top tier tanks, along with the KV-2, the T-25-2 and the SU-152, 6 enemy tanks between them, did 1,375 damage. Slightly more than a third of the 3,630 damage that Triscuit Biscuit did while fighting them with one of the worst DPM guns in the game. The Cromwell behind Triscuit Biscuit also did pretty well out of that Lemming Train himself with nearly 1,700 damage of his own. Not bad for a 75mm gun. Those 6 enemy tanks, 3 of which were top tier, failed between them to accumulate as much damage as either the T-29 or even the M18 Hellcat on their own team. And thanks mostly to the enemy IS, and the enemy IS's dad's credit card, Triscuit Biscuit was able to not only do over 3,600 damage of his own, with one of the worst DPM guns in the game, but he also managed to block 2,100 damage in return. So well done to Triscuit Biscuit, but credit where credit's due, we also have to give some recognition to the IS, the T-25-2, the KV-2, the Jagdpanther, the Leo, and the ISU-152 on the enemy team, without whose efforts this result would almost certainly not have been possible. That's it for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.